Imagine a knock on your door. You open it and are met by strangers accompanied by a police officer. These people are speaking a different language, so you don't understand what they're saying. Eventually, you come to the surreal realization that they've come for your children. There is some time given to pack clothes and say goodbye, and any form of resistance is met with the threat of arrest by the police. You're not sure where your children are going or if you'll ever see them again, and you're wondering what you did wrong. You have no idea what is happening as you helplessly watch this nightmare unfold before your eyes. How does an event like this affect the child, the parents, and the community? This sounds like something that happened long ago, somewhere far away, but this was the reality only a half a century ago, with the residential school education project across Canada and the 60 Scoop, scooping up First Nation children by the plane load for adoption under the disguise of protection, unbeknownst to their family and community across North America and Europe.
The goal of the child welfare system is to strengthen family ties, not to sever them. Being a mother, I can only imagine how having your child taken away from you can feel like. A child gone away from home, away from the person who is supposed to protect them, guide them, teach them their traditions and culture, and help shape who they are. Now imagine having a child taking on the heritage and culture of the foster or adoptive parents. This kind of removal has caused social problems in First Nations communities, such as high suicide rates, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, poverty, and any other social problem you can think of.
You were living with your family, upholding the same traditions your ancestors had generations ago. Now imagine this. Strange men appear seemingly out of nowhere and demand control of you. You are no longer permitted to speak your native tongue. Traditional ceremonies are prohibited. Men can no longer grow their hair. Your children are taken away from you, and your land is slowly destroyed. Then in 1876, you discover new legislation the white man has created called the Indian Act. In this, you are his property. You are given a title, Indian. But what's worse than having a stigmatized title attached to your name is to have no title at all. In this act, they can take away your Indian status, your legal connection to your ancestors. This mistreatment of Indigenous people went on for hundreds of years, and their battle is not over yet.
Before college, I knew next to nothing about the Indigenous people of Canada. I'd heard the messages that I grew up with, that our Indigenous people were a problem. Corruption, laziness, endemic substance abuse. No one talked about what might have caused the problems. The people, an inborn defect of character, that was the problem. I know now that I live on and profit from an occupied territory. My ancestors used brutal methods to disrupt Indigenous culture, families, and ways and means of life. From spreading disease, forced relocations, the imposition of laws that forbid cultural and healing practices. We ripped children from their families to be placed in alien, unloving, unsustaining environments where many were hideously abused and far too many simply died. The Indian problem has never been a problem of the Indigenous people. The problem lies in our culture's relationship with them. If we truly want reconciliation, I think we have to start there, with that relationship.
Throughout history, Indigenous peoples have been affected by discrimination, colonization, and oppression that have ultimately affected their way of life. Events such as residential schools and the 60 Scoop are examples of trauma that Indigenous peoples have experienced and passed on through generations. To work with Indigenous peoples, we need to be aware of and understand their individual situations, behaviors, mental health, and culture. To move towards healing, we need to provide them with support and alternative ways to cope with past and current situations. It is important to reconnect Indigenous peoples with their culture by respecting their stories and motivating them to be more involved in their cultural traditions and practices. We need to make sure that we create a safe and positive space for them to open up to us that is free of judgment. Advocating for Indigenous peoples is a way to educate other members of society on issues that are affecting Indigenous peoples and how we can create a positive and improved way of life for current and future generations.